Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affairs Analysis for 16th April 2020, and these are the articles we'll be dealing today. The first article for the day is taken from the Hindu and it is titled Seize the Distractions and Seize the Moment. Recently we have seen a scenario where the Union Cabinet has decided to cancel the MP-led funds for 2 years. So there are a lot of measures to save the cost in dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic, but the author of this article feels that these steps are not sufficient. The reason is, firstly, he feels that these are cosmetic cuts, which are simply not sufficient for handling the COVID-19 crisis. The next important step that the government must be taking is to ensure how to get the parliamentary function back on track. If we take, for example, the UK has also implemented a lockdown, but its parliament is connecting all the members through video conferencing so that the session can resume virtually on April 21st after the Easter break. The British Parliament has created a page on its website tracking all the government orders related to the pandemic. We have seen a similar case not just in Britain but also in New Zealand, where a lot of parliamentary committees based on secondary legislation are working together to get Parliament back on track. So the Indian Parliament, which was adjourned on March 23rd, the day after the Janata curfew, has not convened yet again. So in the previous week, even as the crisis was unfolding, Parliament was debating the establishment of a Sanskrit university. So all our priorities must be focused on containing this COVID-19 only, and all our activities which are not so important right now should be kept aside. So the writer of this article feels that the move on MP LATs is very good. The takeaway for the UPSC exam is the last subheading, that is the scope for reform. So how do we use this COVID-19 as an opportunity to reform the parliamentary system, or how the parliamentary system functions in actuality? So the reform suggested here is, first one is the use of technology. In the lockdown, we have witnessed various countries resorting to video conferencing. So we can explore how we can use technology going down the line to reduce the time taken for paperwork, etc. Secondly, we can discuss the allocation of money for parliamentarians. Most of the money goes towards their personal allowances, etc. But a lot of money should be dedicated for research as well. We need to provide office space for every parliamentarian and his research team. We should ensure that there is a lot of transparency involved in the functioning of the MP's office as well, and how decisions are taken with respect to a particular issue in the constituency. There should be public debates about how these programs taken up at constituency level are efficient enough to create an impact. There should be a feedback mechanism available. At the same time, we should ensure that in order to solve social problems, we attract the best talent, that is an amalgamation of both the social sciences as well as the technological sciences, to ensure that the research on the ground in the constituency level is collated and finally amalgamates at the central level to ensure that there is a repository of best practices. To top it up with all this, we need to have an efficient judiciary which uses technology, and there is a definitive timelines on when a particular issue will be solved. Together, all these issues can definitely ensure that COVID-19 presents us the best possible opportunity to reform our governance system. That is the gist of this article. The next article for the day is taken from the Live Mint and it is titled Fiscal and Monetary Policy, Why It Will Take Two to Tango. So if we take a look at the present economic crisis caused by COVID-19, we have seen different kind of responses from developed economies and emerging markets. Developed countries have ensured that there is a fiscal stimulus. US has unprecedented fiscal stimulus to the tune of 10% of the GDP. Emerging economies like India cannot afford this because we will be downgraded. We have already seen many credit rating agencies predicting a very doomsday kind of a scenario for emerging markets, and our average economic growth rate would be somewhere around 2%, according to most of the conservative estimates from international organizations. So if we keep on borrowing more, our capacity to pay back that debt will be very less. Therefore, emerging markets cannot go for this kind of a fiscal stimulus. Yes, even US would be facing an economic downturn, but it has the ability to absorb that extra liquidity that it releases right now. Even during the global financial crisis, it went for quantitative easing, that is, it went for infusing money into the market by printing a lot of bonds, and eventually it absorbed that. But can India afford to do that? The answer is no. In the last month, RBI has taken a lot of measures to increase the liquidity in the market. For example, we have had the long-term repo operations, we have had measures to increase the liquidity into the system through Operation Twist. We have also seen a revision of policy rates. Now we have a low rate of 4.4% in our system. Despite all these measures, there is a contrasting reality. Given the abundant liquidity in the system, and we also have private businesses not opting for loans because of uncertainty in our economy. So even the credit growth of banks is pretty low. Despite all these situations, we have had a very steep yield curve. What do you mean by this yield curve? Whenever there is a demand for bond price rises. So the amount of returns it will give. For example, if a bond price is 100 rupees and if someone in the market is willing to invest in government bonds, the bond price will increase obviously. So because of the demand, say the bond price becomes 120 rupees. So the yield or the percentage of interest that we will be getting on this bond will reduce. So RBI focuses on reducing the yield as much as possible to maintain this credit ratings. What are these credit ratings? Simply put, credit ratings are nothing but the recognition that the particular bond is worthy of investment. So if a bond has high yield, it just means that there is a high risk involved as well. Now generally government securities have very low yields because no matter what happens, government securities will definitely be in a position to pay back. But that situation is not seen in the present case because our yields are still increasing despite all the liquidity measures. One of the major reason here is people are trying to hoard money, they are not willing to spend. So despite having liquidity in the market, we have seen a scenario where even banks are not willing to invest in government securities. One reason for this is we have statutory liquidity ratio where the banks are mandated to invest in government securities. A fixed percentage of the money will be invested in government securities. Now most of the banks have crossed this threshold as well and invested more than required money in government securities because of lack of private credit borrowers. One of the major risks here is most of the banks do not want to invest in long-term bonds which provide stability to an economic system. The major reason is because of the interest risk that is involved. For example, say a 10-year bond is today giving a yield of 6.5%. If there is an interest of 6.5% in the longer run, it is fine. But if inflation erodes all this interest, there is no benefit for the banks as well. So most of the banks are involved in only short-term bonds. So this way they are able to save their interest as well. So in this context, RBI must help both the banks as well as the governments to tread over this economic uncertainty times. So the first step that RBI should do is increasing the ways and means advances. Ways and means advances is nothing but the amount given to state governments and central governments for temporary mismatch in receipts and expenditure. Secondly, since people will be keeping cash with them, the RBI should be in a position to buy all the government bonds with people. So this will ensure that there is enough liquidity with people as well. Now, if we talk about the fiscal measures that the government must take to support the monetary aspects of the banks, on the fiscal front, we have to realize that we don't have unlimited pockets to spend like United States of America or UK. We have to prioritize our expenditures very stringently, and we must focus on boosting the healthcare capacity immediately. All our money should be directed towards healthcare. This is the price we are paying because of the lack of budgets allocated for infrastructure creation in the 70 years before this, after the independence. So we have to pay the price now. We have to prioritize on healthcare sector alone. So there should be support for the needy in cash and kind. And after the healthcare, our second priority should be towards Manrega. We have to have a scenario where more and more number of people are getting their daily wages of rupees 209 for as many days as possible. This should be the second point of focus. And the third one is, it is particularly important to prevent the shock from amplifying across a risk-averse financial system. That is, we have to ensure that credit guarantee and recapitalization funds are available with the financial sector. Otherwise, banking sector will collapse virtually. So this is how monetary policy and fiscal policy should go hand in hand. Otherwise, during these times of economic uncertainty, where the world is moving not just towards a recession but also the worst phase of economy after the Great Depression, it will be very difficult to overcome this problem. That is the gist of this article.